All right, Chanel, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. This is Community Board 2 Manhattan Landmarks Committee, the second of two meetings for this month. In order to facilitate the public comment sections of the meeting, a sign-in sheet is being placed in the chat. Please fill it out for each application on which you wish to speak. Each person may speak for 2 minutes on any application. Please plan your remarks accordingly. We're particularly busy tonight, so we'll have to be very strict about the 2-minute limit. Please ensure that your camera and microphone are turned off. You will be elevated to panelist at the proper time. When your name is called, turn on your camera and microphone and give your name and connection to the project as a neighbor organization representative or associated with the project. Be sure to turn off your camera and microphone when you finish speaking. A member of the committee will consolidate the questions and comments from the public and will pose them after all of the public members have spoken. The order of each application will be presentation of the application by the applicant. Comments will follow in the following order. Elected officials or their representative, invited guests, of which there are none tonight, members of the public, and then the questions from the teller will come following all of the public testimony. Members of the board who are not on the committee and members of the committee. Following the presentation, there will be a business session of the committee to form the resolutions. Everyone is invited to remain, however, only members of the committee may participate. Everyone, please note that the Landmarks Commission, and by extension, this committee and the board, make determinations of appropriateness according to the statutes and regulations governing the commission. While there may be other concerns about an application, these will be noted but not govern a determination of appropriateness. The first application is 257 Canal Street to demolish a no-style building and construct a new 20-story affordable and supportive housing residential building. The applicant will explain the use of the building, and I say to the applicant briefly, please, about requesting a waiver or waivers, which are required a hearing before the City Board of Standards and Appeals. This is in turn requires a hearing by the Community Board 2 Landmarks Committee. This meeting will take place in the auditorium, and that meeting will be the proper forum to discuss things other than landmarks issues. This hearing will consider only the building that the applicant is proposing and the waivers granted, and is only appropriateness for the historic district before the committee. Please limit your comments to this aspect. When the applicant's ready, we may begin.
Thank you, Chanel. I think we are all ready. This is Cass Stackelberg of Higgins, Quays, Barth and Partners. Thank you to you, Chanel, and to the committee for hearing us tonight. And David, if you want to go to the second slide, let's go there. I'm going to just introduce the site and the overall project, and then our client, Jeremy Kumbian, President and CEO of Children's Village, is going to speak briefly about the program. Marjorie Perlmutter is going to speak briefly about the BSA action. Marjorie is the founding member of Urban Factors, and then David Kubik, partner BKSK, will take you through the design proposal. I'll share a little bit about the context and history of the site as well. So,
excuse me, is
yes.
that in fact one or two buildings?
It's entered as two buildings in the designation report, 257 and
Okay,
259
I'll
Canal Street.
correct I've read one building because that's what.
Yeah,
was
we refer to it as
Okay,
257
thank you.
Canal Street. I'll also just mention for the committee that we're calendared for the August 4th public hearing. This was initially calendared for July 28th, but we will be heard on August 4th. So the slide here is showing the site as it currently exists, this two-story site, sort of a missing tooth between two historic buildings on either side. This is the north side of Canal Street, between Broadway and Lafayette. The building directly behind us is 130 Lafayette Street, a building that is currently under construction at 25 stories. It is just outside the boundaries of the historic district. And on the right is a historic district map. The outline in blue is the original SoHo boundaries, and in red, the SoHo extension, which was designated in 2010. As the committee knows, the district contains an important collection of historic buildings, ranging from small-scale federal-style houses to probably the greatest collection of cast iron-fronted buildings, certainly in the city and perhaps the country, and then much taller steel frame buildings, commercial buildings from the first quarter of the 20th century. Next slide. The project that we're sharing with you tonight.
All right, not sure why this is. There we go.
Thank you. The project we're sharing with you tonight is for a 20-story residential building. The building is going to be 100% low-income affordable with 60% supportive housing. And there are two primary appropriateness points that we will be discussing tonight and at the public hearing. The first is the appropriateness of the demolition of the existing building. These two buildings are given no style listings in the extension, historic district extension from 2010. And then the second, of course, is the design of the new building at 20 stories, as David will take you through. The rendering here, you can see in the context of the under construction 130 Lafayette Street, as I mentioned, just outside the designated extension. And then in the background, the current approved height for 277 Canal Street at 150 feet. We know that that project is going through the public review process currently and is proposed to be considerably taller than what's shown in this rendering at this point. I do think it's important to note before we dive in just a number of circumstances that do make this site unique. One, of course, is that these two buildings on the site today are actually the result of cut downs of 5-story loft buildings. The position of the site, rather, in the southeast corner of the district, we think is relevant. It is within, obviously, the boundaries of the historic district, but its context is not purely the historic district. It is sort of the greater urban fabric that you see in this image. The scale of Canal Street, I think, is quite relevant in here as a 100-foot wide street, directly adjacent to Lafayette Street as well at 80 feet wide. And then, of course, the proximity of this development to significant transit, which we think makes this site particularly appropriate, certainly for the program, but also we think for the design and the scale of the property. From here, let me have Jeremy speak a little bit about Children's Village and the program for the building.
Thank you, Cass. Committee, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Jeremy Kahumban, the president and CEO of the Children's Village. We turn 175 years old this month, founded by Peter Cooper of Peter Cooper Union fame. We began in the Five Points neighborhood, so it's a little bit like coming home to the Canal Street SoHo historic district today. We work with three types of children: children who are victims of human trafficking, children who are separated from family due to child welfare investigations, and children and young adults impacted by juvenile justice. Three populations, one mission, And the mission is to create family and to give kids love, because children that grow up in jails, in group homes, in institutions do poorly. They simply graduate to other systems. I'm proud to say I've been in this role for 21 years. 85% of our children go home to a family member year after year, and we create family for the other 15% that don't, and that all often includes amazing foster parents in New York City, and also adoptive parents. Our proposal is contextual. It's not exceptional. We're not really asking for special treatment. We have thought about this project quite deeply. Its only meaningful difference is its intended use. And I would say that that use is also its greatest public benefit. We are proposing a building that will be permanently affordable, low income affordable, not affordable for a generation, but permanently affordable, bringing 54 homes to the amazing young people that I am so privileged to work with, and to New Yorkers, many who serve us in our communities. For generations, housing patterns in New York City has concentrated poverty and separated people from opportunity. Too often, the young people that I am privileged to serve are placed in neighborhoods already burdened by disinvestment, poor housing conditions, and have limited access to the opportunities that would help them thrive. We have 70 years of data in the United States that tells us one thing: where you live and where your children go to school is the best predictor of second-generation success. Nothing else comes close. And we love to build homes in communities where I would choose to live, where my children would choose to live. And we have a proven track record of doing that, along with Alembic Community Partners, our partner in this project. We built the Eliza, known as the Inwood Library Project, where we built 174 homes, 22,000 square feet for the New York Public Library, a community center, a teaching kitchen. We are building a library in the town of Peekskill. We are building homes on East 147th. We built townhouses in Dobbs Ferry in Westchester County. Just a few projects that speak to the places where we love to build. This building that we propose is an amazing opportunity for us to bring permanent affordability to a community that provides so much beauty, history, and opportunity. And I should mention before I end that the building height is not arbitrary either. We have met with HPD and all interested parties for months and arrived at this height to accommodate the complex financing streams. This feels like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to bring permanently affordable homes to an amazing, amazing community. And I hope that we would have your support to do this. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marjorie Perlmutter. I'm Land Use Counsel to Alembic Community Development. I'm just going to add very briefly, because the building has to have the 88 studio units to accommodate the entirety of the program and meet the funding demands that are required of it. It needs the additional height and the additional probably floor area to accommodate this. And the only way to avoid the 155-foot setback height that unfortunately plagues a lot of historic districts, where you're required to set back where it's not typical of the neighborhood, is to get a waiver from the Board of Standards and Appeals. And in this case, the only way that the building could get such a waiver is if it was providing low-income supportive housing through a very special type of variance. And as a result, this project could only be built for the Children's Village, and it cannot be transferred to another user. So this is a very specific building for a very specific user. And I'll just leave it at that to be brief.
Thanks, Marjorie. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm just returning to the current context. You can see the property project site on the left of the photograph along the north side of Canal Street, and 130 Lafayette Street currently under construction. This is an evolving context, both sort of an urban context, but as we know from applications down the street, an evolving context within the district. Next slide. This next slide just illustrates the block context. So obviously the project site is highlighted in blue. You can see that the back of our project site directly abuts 130 Lafayette Street, so they are immediate neighbors. You can see the boundaries of the district as we are located in the southeast corner of the district. And then, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 50-foot wide lot on a 100-foot wide block, and with 80 feet of frontage or width at Lafayette Street. This is an unusual set of circumstances with these very wide streets, Canal Street, Lafayette Street, and Canal Street in the immediate proximity of this proposed development. Next slide. On the south side, this is now just directly across the street. A portion of that block front to the west is part of the Tribeca North Historic District, and you can see in the background the building on Broadway, 401 Broadway, at about 300 feet directly behind those buildings fronting onto Canal Street. So there are some quite tall buildings in the immediate context, both in the historic district directly adjacent, as well as the adjacent context. Next slide. The committee probably is aware of this. The rendering on the left illustrates the proposed construction at 130 Lafayette at 270 feet tall, directly adjacent. And then the rendering on the right is the approved condition for 277, or the approved design for 277 Canal Street at 150 feet. And then the inset is the proposal that was presented last month to the committee and to the commissioners for an increased height. As I mentioned, that project is currently going through public review. Returning back to our site at 257 Canal Street. Next slide. So two historic photographs. I mentioned earlier that this site is unique in the way in which it was cut down and kind of reformed to this two-story taxpayer. So the image on the left from 1915 illustrates the two buildings, 257 and 259, these six-story commercial buildings that were on the site previously, 19th century commercial buildings, store and loft buildings. And then the tax photo on the right from 1940 showing the demolition and cutting down of those two loft buildings, and then the construction of what is there today and has been there since 1925. Next slide. The entry in the designation report for the SoHo extension does call this building out as a no-style building. It is in rough condition, let's say. The base of the building is completely opened up with roll-down gates for this kind of open market, and then a range of conditions across the upper floors. But the commission did determine that this building was no style, and as the committee, I think, understands, that does indicate that the building does not contribute to the underlying historic district in which it is located. Next slide. The commission has approved the demolition of no-style buildings in the extension, as well as buildings of sort of similar style and age in the original historic district. This is just a collection of some of them. And as you know, the commission has approved a wide range of new buildings, both ranging in an aesthetic expression, some sort of historicizing, some of them very contemporary, some of them quite tall and taller than their context, and some consistent with their adjacency. So this is to indicate that the approval for the demolition, we think, is appropriate, and we think the replacement of a contextual building, even at its height, can be found appropriate. Next slide. It's also important to understand kind of the underlying significance of the SoHo district, the sort of the original 1970s district. And one of the things the designation report speaks quite a bit about is about the importance of building technologies and the evolution of building technology throughout SoHo. And these are just a series of 3 tax photos representing 3 different eras of construction represented in the district. These early federal style houses like these on Spring Street from the 1820s, masonry construction, the numerous cast iron fronted buildings that are prevalent throughout the side streets of the district, really beginning in the late 1860s, 1870s through the 1890s. This advancement in building technologies, the advent of cast iron architecture, the modularity and prefabrication that came with that. And then by the end of the 19th century and into the early 20th century, the application of steel frame construction and what that meant for buildings throughout the city and throughout the country, and this move toward increased height. Whereas cast iron buildings typically tapped out at 5 or 6 stories, steel frame buildings could be much taller, 10 or 15 stories, and those proliferate the district. And so we think in the evolution of building technologies, the building that we're proposing, which is a reinforced concrete building with slab piles, is sort of part of that continuing evolution that, just like this continuum allows for greater height, the proposed building construction and technology inherent in the proposal also allows for greater height and is in keeping with that sense of evolution in the district. Next slide. A few examples of these steel frame commercial buildings that become very prevalent, particularly along Broadway, but elsewhere in the district, sometimes even on the side streets. These are 50-foot wide mid-block buildings where you have considerable height adjacent to 4-story buildings or lower. This is a feature that one sees throughout the district, as I said, not just on Broadway, but some of the narrower streets elsewhere in the district. Next slide. And we have a few images that illustrate that prevalence. So on the left, of course, 499 Broome Street, which is a Broome Street address, but on Broadway, very narrow, considerably taller than its adjacencies. But these two other buildings, and I apologize, we have that 446 Broome Street, a narrow 20-foot wide building, 38 Crosby Street, a bit wider, but considerably taller than their adjacencies. And this sort of comparison between the cast iron and masonry fronted buildings with these steel frame buildings, I think, is really quite important and really essential to the understanding of the historic district and its underlying significance. Next slide. As I mentioned, the project site is obviously fronts on Canal Street. You can see there's an overlay of the district map in red, and we've highlighted the wide streets that basically frame the historic district. Canal and Houston at 100 and 125 feet, West Broadway at 74 feet, and then Broadway and Lafayette at 80 feet. Our building fronting onto Canal Street, a very wide street in the city, and in this immediate context, we think lends itself to the appropriateness of a large building on this site. Next slide. We've also mapped these height discrepancies that I illustrated in some of those photographs. This diagram is illustrating in blue buildings that are at least twice as tall as the properties adjacent, and those adjacent properties are in gray. So you can see it in a perspective view, looking across the district, in plan view on the lower right. And what this shows, interestingly, is that there's a sort of a prevalence of these height discrepancies and proliferation really throughout the historic district. This is not just an isolated condition that happens in a certain quadrant of the district, but really happens throughout the district. Next slide. And similarly, this condition happens on mid-block sites as well. Again, not sort of concentrated in one quadrant or precinct, but really sort of spread throughout the district, where you have buildings of significantly greater height adjacent to shorter buildings directly adjacent. It happens really throughout the district. Next. We also have looked at just overall building height, so buildings of 100 feet and greater. And interestingly, there does seem to be some concentration, which seems to be on the eastern edge of the district, perhaps aligning with the transit improvements from the first quarter of the 20th century along Broadway and Lafayette. But important to note that those really do occur on these larger streets and in proximity with subway stations, similar to our proposal near Lafayette and Canal. And then finally, looking at kind of a broader context. Next slide. In a broader context of sort of taller buildings, I mentioned 401 Broadway. I'll just circle that here. Here at nearly 300 feet, some of these taller individual landmarks at 16 Walker and 75 Varick, but seeing that sort of in the context of these taller buildings that exist on the eastern edge of the historic district. Next slide. And then just looking at a bit more of this condition throughout the district, these three examples on Broadway, again, these very massive, robust masonry fronted buildings that extend considerably higher than their immediate neighbors. Independent of height, we think the sort of architectural expression of those tall buildings is really significant. And one, next slide, one that David and his colleagues have studied very closely in the way that historic buildings treated scale and height. And so frequently these buildings adopting sort of classical architecture, breaking the facades down into a base, shaft, and capital. But even within that tripartite arrangement, sort of moderating height by creating horizontal registers, tall bases, intermediary cornices, upper cornices, mansards, and different treatments to kind of break down the scale of these taller buildings. And that historic architectural treatment is something that finds its way into appropriately into the design of our proposed building. And then next slide, just looking at the base and the way these buildings meet the sidewalk, really a key component of this project and what gives SoHo so much of its vitality, particularly the row across the top, which are all 50-foot wide tall commercial buildings with these two-story masonry frame expressions, metal and glass insets for storefronts, 1- and 2-story expressions, and then the row across the bottom, some 3-story expressions, some wider, but again, all sort of looking at the way these bases are treated with these sort of robust masonry frames, metal and glass infill, and thinking about how the base of the building meets the sidewalk and meets the pedestrian scale is really critical to our thinking for the design of this project. David?
Great, thank you, Cass. Again, I'm David Kubik, partner at BKSK Architects. I'll walk you through some of the details of the design. Just picking up where Cass was just discussing, really looking at the collection of these taller buildings that came in the district, it seemed really clear to us that the architects at the time really embraced the tall nature of the new buildings and celebrated their height and proposed these very kind of bold, grand facade compositions. And breaking that down a little bit, in many cases, as Cass started to explain, they would have these kind of grand multi-story bases with a sort of deep pier expression. You'd often see maybe a transitional floor with another horizontal expression or register, and then kind of the typical floors would march up. And then at the top of the building, it would be broken down into, multi-story, multi-layered upper floors with kind of bold cornices and mansard roofs and dormer expressions, like we were seeing on some of the earlier slides. And then particularly on the 50-foot wide examples, you would often see this kind of ABA rhythm to the width of the facade, with these kind of end piers kind of bookending the elevation with a sort of larger central bay in the middle. So here, looking at where we are and the massing of the context, as Marjorie noted, this is a very unique site tucked down here into the extreme corner of the district, facing both the wide street of Canal Street as well as Lafayette, and really nestled between two avenues as well, of both Lafayette and Broadway. And then again, you can see we just sort of dotted these two projects, the one to the right, 130 Lafayette, which is the one that's currently in construction, and then 277 Canal Street here to our west. And then looking at the proposed massing, first you could see what we were showing you in plan earlier, that our building really actually touches corner to corner with the context here just to our north on Lafayette Street. And then again, looking at the facade, you can start to see, we'll show you more detail, but some of the strategies that we diagrammed on the previous slides coming into the design of the facade. So you get a really kind of grand base, a typical floor rhythm marching up, kind of multi-story top. There's a kind of a grand cornice here at the 17th floor, an attic story, a sloped dormer, mansard type expression, So the kind of DNA of it is very similar. The details are a little more contemporary of our time, but it's clearly rooted in the context of what we see here in the district. And the strategy for the massing of the upper portion of our building was quite deliberate. We wanted to have a really bold cornice line that you really read from the street level, from the pedestrian experience here at the 17th floor, and start to slope back the reading of the upper story. You still get a very grand top, which kind of proportionally works for the kind of base middle top composition that you'd expect to see on a building like this. But then it also starts to relate nicely to the heights that are nearby us. So we think you're really going to start to feel a datum, you know, if it were at this height, both on Canal Street and turning the corner to some of the larger buildings on Lafayette Street. This is just a slightly more zoomed in plan of what you saw earlier on the block plan. Again, you could see our proposed building here. It's really this square that rises the full height. This is a terrace that occurs on the second floor. But here on this kind of northeast corner of our building, we really sort of, you know, kind of kiss corner to corner with the proposed building at 130 Lafayette. So looking at the elevation in a little more detail, this is kind of a perspective view of it on the left, and then a conventional elevation line drawing here on the right. So just starting with the elevation, again, picking up on some of those same themes and concepts. So we have our kind of grand two-story base here, a transitional floor, the typical floors, these two upper stories before the main cornice line, which you can see here on the left, and then kind of one final attic story before the mansard roof and dormer windows start appearing and setting back at the top. We'll go here to the next slide. So here you can see a perspective a little bit closer of the materials to just walk through the palette. One of the things that we saw pretty consistently with 50-foot wide buildings and similar to our height was that the front facades would be kind of a, you know, light gray, cream, buff, beige color. And then the lot line walls or the rear walls would be a more utilitarian red brick material. So following suit, we're showing this kind of light brick cladding on the front facade. There are some darker, like charcoal gray accent bricks that are kind of weaving through the composition, which we'll show you in a little more detail in a minute. The zinc is for the mansard roof up top. At the base of the building, we have a mixture of both limestone and granite. And then the two-story storefront, which we'll show you in more detail, has this historic Avon green color. And then looking at the window configurations a little more specifically, we are incorporating a louver at the bottom portion of the window, which allows for a console unit to be provided on the inside of the apartments for each living room and bedroom. So those happen quite low and tight to the sill and are kind of set back. And then there's a cast stone sill, which you can see here, capping the brick spandrels. Just pausing here too as well, you can start to appreciate some of the details that we've incorporated into the brick design. So the two main piers have you know, an extra little detail on their edges, sort of letting in by 1 inch, just giving them a little bit of articulation. You see the depth of which the windows are located. It's a full 12-inch depth for that window recess. Some of the decorative brick patterning that you see on the spandrels, as well as these piers. So the brick detailing really provides a sort of sense of grandeur and heft and substantialness to this facade, which we think is appropriate. Just zooming out, an overall view of the project from the west. So here again, you can see the effect of that palette with the lighter brick facing the street, the red brick facing the lot line, and the effectiveness of kind of a good deep cornice, 2'6" deep cornice here at this 17th floor, and then seeing the kind of mansard roof setting back with its dormer windows. You can also see our kind of tall grand base clad in stone, and that kind of transitional floor that has both stone and some brick courses weaving through it, and how that relates nicely to the building to our west in terms of that kind of street level scale of what you'll feel as a pedestrian walking by. A view from the east. So again, here's that corner condition we were showing in plan where the two buildings meet. Similarly, you can see how we're lining up with the adjacent buildings. And we'll show you in more detail, but we thought this was a great opportunity to include some public art on the lot line wall. So we have a proposal for that, and we'll show you exactly what that means. And then just looking up here at the top of our building from this view, you can see the stair bulkhead and the elevator bulkhead a little bit there. Go next. And then zooming here at the street level. So again, you can kind of see our grand base, the 2-story storefront infill. So this is where that historic green color kind of comes in. At the ground floor, this is a commercial space. The residential entrance is here on the east side, this one bay off to the right, with just a service door or egress door here on the left. The second floor is actually the administrative area for Children's Village. So it actually marries really well from a use point of view with the facade strategy. So the apartments don't begin until the third floor, where the window pattern really supports them more appropriately. So we do get this kind of great 2-story reading on the storefront. And just walking through some of the details a little bit, you'll sort of see kind of base, middle, top. So here are those, here again, you get that ABA rhythm like we were showing in the diagrams earlier, with these kind of end piers bookending the facade and a larger central bay. Here's that green double-story storefront with a kind of dark gray cornice here at the top of our double-story frame, and then these dark gray decorative piers that frame the storefront a little more specifically. And then on the third floor, again, you see the stone and brick courses kind of weaving through, transitioning a little bit before the typical floors start to march up. Just looking at the typical floors, like we saw earlier, you have the windows that kind of slide all the way through, but in this central bay, we have this kind of sawtooth pattern with these bricks being recessed on the spandrel, giving it a little bit of this kind of weaving texture and really, hinting at that larger central bay and giving it a little bit more hierarchy, reinforcing that kind of ABA bookend composition to the building. And then every other floor, just a little bit of a accent brick course to kind of break up the rhythm of those typical floors as they march up. And then at the upper portion of the building, this is the painted aluminum cornice at the 17th floor that has quite a deep projection, as you can see in the detail over here. And then kind of one final cornice line before the sloped mansard roof begins and the dormer windows appear. This would be a standing seam zinc roof cladding for this sloped portion. To just speak about the artwork again, in this district, we do see very nice examples of public art, especially on some of the large lot line wall opportunities, and even an example here with the sidewalk etching. So it's nice to see that there are already some great examples of public art, and we think we can add to that. We've been working with an artist named Nancy Blum, who's done a lot of large-scale public art commissions. We thought she'd be a great fit for this. And so she's proposed this precast relief artwork here on our brick lot line wall that is really showing an image of a lotus flower, which has a lot of meaning both for the sort of culture in the area and the neighborhood, as well as a nice story for Children's Village. So we're pretty excited about that. And you can see in its detail that it'll have this sort of carved sense of relief to it, which will have a lovely sense of cast shadow and light on the side of this wall. And then lastly, the floor plans, just to walk you through in a very basic way to understand the building. Like we said, on the ground floor, there's a large commercial space here, and then the main residential entry on the east bay and just a service entrance on the west bay. In the cellar, some support spaces, commercial storage. And as Cass said, we thought it was a good place to just highlight and show that, one of the reasons why the technology allows us to build taller now than 100 or 150 years ago is really the foundation strategies, right? Where this is piles on pile caps and grade beams. And this allows us to get greater capacity to support the structure of the building. Then here on the left, the second floor, so behind that storefront that we were looking at earlier is the administrative suite for Children's Village, a common laundry room, and then community room for all the residents of the building here at the back of the second floor with access to their private terrace here on the second floor. And then as you rise up, there are 4 studio apartments, 2 facing the back, 2 facing the front, and one bedroom. And that really is the typical plan that stacks from the 3rd floor up to the 18th floor. And the only differences are on the 19th floor, it's essentially the same plan. It's just you're starting to set back with the sloped roof expression. And on the 20th floor, since we've sloped back as much as we have over the 2 floors, it actually switches to 2 one-bedrooms instead of 3 units. But otherwise, it's essentially the same floor plan. On the main roof, there is a common roof terrace here for all the residents in the building. And then all the mechanical equipment we've tried to locate more centrally here in the back of the roof. All this equipment would be screened. And then as you can see on the right-hand side, the stair bulkhead is along the lot line, but the elevator machine room is kind of pulled in more central in plan, which allows it to be less visible. We've tried to keep everything in the middle as much as possible. A view from the east, and I think we can close there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. You finished?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, we finished.
A couple questions of some, is it 20 or 21 floors?
20.
And what is the height of the building itself?
Yeah, the best place to show you that, and we'll come here. We have a couple different heights. I'll start with.
I would say in that drawing to the above the last occupied floor.
Sure. Yep. So the top of the parapet for the main roof up here, which would be the top of that, is 225 foot 9 inches.
And the total height, considering mechanicals and elevator and so forth, that whatever sticks up highest.
Yeah, and then so above that parapet, there's an additional 26 foot 11 inches to get you to the top of that bulkhead.
2611.
Right. For the bulkhead elements.
Okay, thank you. It's all
Sure.
very clear. There's one thing I'd like to ask before we start the questions about
Sure.
just the a choice that was made. Why are there no windows in the east? And I don't remember seeing the west lot line in either of the lot line facades there. Yeah.
So we do have a few lot line windows, but you're right to say that we don't have a lot, but we do show this row of windows just behind the main facade expression on both sides. The reason why there aren't more on this,
I see, yeah. Okay.
Right? You can see them there. There aren't more on this side because it's really the core. As you saw in the plans, the fire stair is really here. And then on the west side, there aren't more, both from a code point of view, but also from an appropriateness point of view, right? Lot line walls typically don't have a lot of windows in them, and that kind of grows out of what they were, right? They were the load-bearing walls, they were the fire-rated walls, separating, their building from adjacent buildings. The building code actually limits us to how many windows we can have on that wall, really only like 10%. So it's both a regulatory requirement, but I would also say from a landmarks point of view, we also think this is an appropriate amount of windows that you might find on a lot line wall.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing now that we have buildings built that in theory would have had a building beside them and the lot line wouldn't be exposed. So it's always an interesting
Sure.
how it's treated. And
yeah, and I think
you use the public art solution that it's not a plain black walls. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, we can have Susan, please, the public
Okay,
question.
we'll start the public session now. I believe 6 people have signed up, and our district manager, Mark Diller, will start elevating them to be able to speak. So Mark, if you could go ahead, that would be great.
And
Thank you.
just a reminder, please, we had the introduction about the use to gain an understanding of why the building is as tall as it is. We, however, are not considering that in our discussion. So if you would please confine your questions and comments to the design of the building itself and its appropriateness. Thank you. Susan, when you're ready.
Hey, Pete, we're ready for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And remember, please, 2 minutes.
Yep, I'm Pete Davies, Broadway Residents Coalition. Even though we're being limited from speaking about the BSA, everything that we've been presented is based on the BSA. So I'm just a little confused by that. The windows that you show on the side, the minimal number of windows, those are not shown on the floor plans. So, but it seems you've just reiterated that there will be windows on the sidewalls. So you can answer that in a minute. Let me continue. The east-facing wall with the artwork, that entire expanse above the neighboring building at 255, the development rights were sold to 130 Lafayette. So in essence, that could be treated as a wall that would accept windows. So I'm just curious again about that. And then finally, since you're going for a variance for additional height, why didn't you go higher?
Should I go ahead and answer those questions now?
Yeah, we're going to take all the questions.
Take all the
At the end.
questions at once after the public has finished testifying. Thank
Okay.
you. I've got your questions, Pete. Thanks. Mark, I think
You have more, Pete.
we can promote the next person now.
Okay, so, in order, the folks who have been promoted are, Cheyenne.
Right, Cheyenne, why don't you go next? Thank you.
That sounds good. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, thanks.
Awesome. So good afternoon. My name is Cheyenne. I'm currently pursuing my master's in public administration at NYU, and until recently, I was a policy entrepreneur at Next 100, which is a think tank that brings people with lived expertise to the table to help solve issues that they know firsthand. And my work focuses on the intersection of housing and young people aging out of the foster care system and creating research and policy that focuses around that. But before I started researching this issue, I lived it. I entered foster care when I was 15 years old, and I aged out of 18 years old. And like so many young people leaving the foster care system, I was suddenly trying to figure out where I was going to live and falling through the cracks of homelessness while living in New York City. And in the middle, and as everyone knows, New York City is in the middle of a housing crisis, and that crisis really looks different for young people aging out of the foster care system and other young adults who rely on supportive housing and things of these nature. And when you don't have a family to fall back on, housing isn't just about affordability, it's about whether you have stability at all. And so while I was at Next 100, the think tank, I spent years researching supportive housing, and my research found that many young people aging out of the child welfare system are placed in scattered site apartments that are concentrated in neighborhoods with high poverty rates, higher level of crime, and fewer opportunities than the average New York City neighborhood. And I also found that every supportive housing building I analyzed had many, many open housing violations.
Okay, in 30 seconds, please.
Sorry. Okay. And those weren't just statistics. They were my home. I lived in 4 different buildings that had a lot of those issues. And so when you're 18 years old and you don't have parents or family to fall back on, your housing becomes the foundation for everything else. And so this development would create affordable housing for young people who need supportive housing, and it would create a building and opportunity for young people who often aren't considered in these kind of these conversations. And it's an opportunity to sleep through the night without worrying about rats and other heat and issues of that nature. And those are just realities of young people and things that I have personally dealt with. And quality housing shouldn't be a privilege, it should be the standard. And I know that because I lived through what happens when you don't have that. And so I hope that you'll support this project so that more young people have the opportunity that I eventually found, because now I live in one of these buildings that are amazing. And I really, really appreciate that. And I want other young people to have this opportunity as well to succeed and feel like they can have the opportunity to flourish.
Thank you so much, Cheyenne. Thank you for your testimony.
All right, the next person is Eric Nielsen.
Eric Nielsen, please.
Trying to be promoted, but he's been on mute.
You've been unmuted, Eric, so you can ask your question.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Great, thank you. I'm just my name is Eric Nelson. I'm a concerned New York resident. I'm just calling here to urge you to support the project. The project is restoring the existing building on the site to its former glory while adding visual interest to the streetscape with a masonry and facade organization that can complement the surrounding buildings. Serves as a gateway to the SoHo Cast Iron Historic District. The proposed height of the building is consistent with masonry buildings on Canal Street and in the historic district. The facadization fits in within the area context, mimicking nearby buildings and replacing underutilized lot that lacks cohesion with the historic district that it resides in. All the while, it's doing this while also creating an affordable, permanently affordable housing development, 89 units, with a wonderful mission of supportive housing for kids that need it. So just based on that, I'm urging you to support the project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person is Sarah Slater.
Sarah Slater, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Slater, and I am calling in to be in full support of the affordable housing development at 257 Canal Street. Not only is it essential for stability for young adults, but specifically youth in care. As someone who's had lived experience and has risen to the top to have educational and career experience now and be a well-rounded professional, where you live is so essential because it builds community and fosters stability. And so by having this wonderful establishment refaced and repurposed, it allows stability, it fosters community, and it can do more than pass the dollars that's going to be cost to make the investment. And so I just wanted to come on and give my 100% support and be in alignment with everyone else here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
The next person is Victoria Hillstrom. She did plan to be promoted, but
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Is that Victoria?
This is she. Hi. So this is
We can hear
Victoria
you.
Hillstrom. I am a designer, an architect above me. I am very much opposed to this project, chiefly because it fails to respect the design and architectural integrity of our historic districts that we've adapted to residential code supporting fashion, film, music, entertainment, and the arts. This building, being 3 times the size, obstructs our light and puts all of the surrounding businesses at risk. I would be far more in favor of partnering at 5 World Trade Center on HUD-owned land. It does not look as if Larry Silverstein is going to move forward. There are 100 buildings in Midtown that could be adapted to residential code. We would love to work with you on it. I just think that when we are speaking about children coming from these circumstances, it's very important to respect the neighborhood so that they are welcomed into the neighborhood. And for all of those reasons, I'm afraid that the use of the building doesn't quite meet the inappropriateness that affects all of our surrounding businesses
30
when we have
seconds,
100
please.
sites in Lower Manhattan that we could build this project on empty lots. So for that reason, I'm very much opposed. And yet I hope that I speak for all of my neighbors. I happen to be in the Tribeca West historic district, that we very much support these children being part of our community and building them a place to live where they can thrive. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mark, who we got next?
next is Carlin or Carleen. Let me get the message. I'm sorry, Carleen Cowan or Cohen.
Carleen. You're up.
Yes. Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Carlin Cowan. I'm the Chief Policy and Public Affairs Officer at the Chinese American Planning Council, CPC. Thank you for having me today to testify in strong support of the development at 257 Canal Street. CPC was founded in 1965, so we've been rooted in Lower Manhattan for over 60 years, supporting 80,000 New Yorkers every year with services that range from daycares to senior services and everything in between. We also serve a number of youth and have been longtime partners with Children's Village. We think that this is the exact kind of development that Lower Manhattan needs. I actually have walked past this exact site every day for my commute for almost 10 years. And we think that this is the exact kind of development that is necessary in this neighborhood to meet our affordable housing needs, address the housing crisis that New York City is facing, and bring really critical services to Lower Manhattan. Children's Village is an incredible partner, and we are thrilled to continue to partner with them on this. And for these reasons, we're testifying in strong support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlin.
What I have is Laura Tenenbaum.
All right, last but not least, Laura Tenenbaum, please go ahead.
Hi. I'm going to stick to, as we were asked to do, to not stick to use, to discuss use at all. I have some real issues with the scale and the bulk. I want to point out that I live 2 blocks away from this location and have been a proud member of SoHo since 1973. I live in one of the buildings that was in gray that was shown to be one of the tall buildings in the area. My building is 7 stories high. It has 6 families in it. Most of us living there since 1973. We're in the same census tract as this applicant will be. And I want to just point out, and that is a use thing, but it's not use, it's about the neighborhood. There will be 54 young people in the building, at least. I don't know about families with children, but 54 were mentioned. The census tract only has 98 people between 20 and 24 years of age. It's out of scale, not only visually, but out of scale for the community. I have a real problem with gray brick. I wish, I don't know any gray brick buildings in SoHo except for relatively new applications. The gray narrow brick is inappropriate. 10 stories. This building should be 12 stories at the most, if it's twice the height of the buildings next to it, which is what was used as an example throughout the application. I think a 10-story, 12-story building would be entirely appropriate, and the use would be welcome. But the bulk is out of size. It's actually, every bit of it is saying, this isn't SoHo, even my artwork.
Would you conclude, please?
SoHo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laura. If there is anyone else from the public who'd like to speak and hasn't signed up, this is the moment to raise your hand, please. All right, we don't see any raised hands. So we'll move now to, if there are members of the community board who are not on the committee who are here, who would like to speak, please raise your hand. Don't see any. So now we will move to the committee. All right, let's start this. First, I want to go to the public questions. I've aggregated the questions, which are largely from the first person who testified, and they seem to center around the lot line windows, which Chenault had also had some questions about, and I likely will have as well. We understand, we'd like to know really why there aren't, we understand from your explanation that was previously given why there aren't lot line windows, but as Pete Davies mentioned, since the air rights were transferred from that site on the east, why aren't there lot line windows on that east facade?
Sure, I can speak to that a little bit. So, and the lot line windows, there's kind of a couple of questions about them, right? Why they're not here in plan is just because this plan was cut at a lower floor, not on purpose, just happened to be where we cut it. So, for example, it was cut here on a lower floor when we're still next to buildings. So that's the only reason why you don't see them in plan. But they would be proposed where they're seen in the renderings. And then in terms of the east wall, just again, we've located the fire stair core on the east wall so that we could have windows, obviously on the front facade where you see them, but also on the rear facade facing the rear yard, right? The property line for this site has this kind of extension only on the left half, not the right half. So it made sense to locate the core here on the right-hand side of the plan. And so there wouldn't really be any windows for that stretch. And then I'll just go back to something I said before, which is we also think that this feels appropriate given what you see on many lot line windows in the district when there are taller buildings next to shorter buildings. You do see some lot line windows. They tend to be a little bit more restrained. Not many rows of them, but you'll see some populated on the side. So again, we're doing something similar here, but didn't feel, just even from an architectural point of view, that it really begged to have more than that.
And then those thoughts also then continue to the west. So you're thinking about the lack
Same.
of
Yeah.
on the west facade as well.
Correct.
And Pete asked the question, why not higher?
Sure. I think we are looking for a building that worked for our client programmatically and financially, as everyone heard. We've been talking to HPD for months, trying to understand what are very complex funding streams and what they'll fund. So we wanted to get something that worked financially and was viable, but at the same time that we felt was appropriate for the district. We don't think going taller makes this building more appropriate, right? So this was kind of the balance of all those factors.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you. I know that's not a question you would have expected from this committee.
May I ask something
But I appreciate your
while we're on this
answer. Chanel, what?
I just wanted to ask while we're here. I noticed there's something I wanted to add to the statistics. What is the difference in the topmost of this building and the building that's being built adjacent? It appears to be higher from the.
Sure. So again, if we zoom in on this for a minute, the top of the top of our parapet right here being 225.9, the upper roof here is at 275, and you can see their mechanicals, higher than that.
Okay, thank you. I'm
Sure.
sorry to interrupt, Susan.
There was one more question from the public that was in the chat, which was what somebody noted that there's something called a detention tank in the basement. And the question was, what is that?
Oh, sure. That's stormwater management, right? So all the water that gets collected off rooftops, this is part of current building code. We're trying to limit the amount of water that surges into the storm and sanitary system in our city, right? So all new buildings need to have these storage tanks to hold the roof water and slow it down before it goes out into the city infrastructure.
They need them more every day.
Yes, as we know, we don't want the streets to be flooded.
Thank you for that. So we'll move then to the committee questions now. And since we were just talking about the lot line windows, I'm going to start and keep talking about the lack of lot line windows. Understanding the history of lot line windows, understanding the history of lot line windows in the district, understanding that lot line windows do not satisfy light and ventilation requirements. Understanding all of that, I still have to say that thinking about these visually and thinking about the history of these, the scale matters here. And when we have this large scale of an expanse without windows, it's not really the same as the sort of historic sense of lot line windows where there are much smaller scale buildings. So a small expanse with no lot line windows or sort of dummy lot line windows or what have you is very different than these large naked expanses. And I'm just wondering if, you know, you're really opposed categorically to the idea of lot line windows, or for want of a better word, dummy lot line windows where the fire stair core is, given the large scale and the prominence of the east and west facades.
Sure. Do you want to go ahead and address that first? I think it's an interesting question. Like I said, there is obviously a limit from a building code point of view where we can't exceed a certain percentage. You know, at the time as we were composing this, we felt like we were balancing that in a sense with the artwork and the lot line windows we were showing. You know, but I appreciate your comment. I think it's something we could think about a little bit more, or include some exhibits of some of the other lot line walls that we were looking at. I was just reminded about some of the images that are here. But
yeah, but on the Broadway examples that you cited at 583, 599, and 476 Broadway, there appear to be, you know.
Yeah, and like here, like, you know, there are some more on this one, for example. So it's not exactly the same across all of them, but obviously it's a more limited expression.
Right.
But understood. Yeah. It's an
I'll
interesting.
also add, just from a historical perspective, I believe these buildings were typically built without lot line windows, and 583, which is now residential use on the upper floors. I think some of those have been inserted, you know, since the upper floors have become residential in use. So as a sort of referencing sort of these taller commercial buildings, it would be appropriate not to have it. It's not to say we wouldn't consider it, but I think just for sort of historical context, I think that kind of is the explanation why some buildings have them and some don't.
What is the difference in roughly the proportion that has been specified and what's permitted?
10% would be the limit. So if you take the overall facade area,
yeah,
your windows shouldn't exceed
about
10%.
What is the percentage?
Currently, I'm not sure. I can't say. I don't have that off the top of my head, but we're definitely less than 10.
Okay, thank you. And last question regarding the lot line windows is on the west facade. There's an area that echoes the east facade area right there. What is your intention for that area? Is it also meant to be a public art installation, or?
No, we would keep the artwork on the east side only. But we're just looking for kind of these decorative accent brick frames that would kind of divide up this the lot line elevation a bit in its composition. It's also something, you know, we've kind of noted in some other historic examples where, given the larger facade surfaces of these lot line walls, sometimes architects would employ, you know, kind of graphic strategies of just introducing frames and, you know, horizontal lines.
Right, just to break it up, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, let's go to the other members of the committee now. Anita, you've been writing away here.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd like to talk about the design primarily, especially starting with the base.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something that doesn't sit right with me, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. It might be that the first and second floor are not tall enough, or it feels very squat and the green band is very dominating. So you sort of lose the grandeur that you pointed out in so many really good examples. I wish it were perhaps it has to do with the floor to floor height. It also feels very weak. I have to say, very weak, these stripes above the storefront cornice.
What do you mean by weak? So I understand your terminology.
Weak, it's just surface mount, it's sort of a surface mounted detail. I think probably what we're really lacking is the depth, the three-dimensional depth that really shows how these are columns and they're carrying, and the whole purpose of this space is that it's carrying this monumental building above it on its shoulders, if you will. So I would encourage the architects maybe to look again at their beautiful examples and try to rip off a few more good ideas from them, because I think it could be much better, honestly. There's a lot of things that I like about the building. So, but I'm going to talk about the things I don't like first. Also, I'm just going to run through my list and then I'll turn it over to whoever wants to pick up on those things. The decorative elements that seem very oddly surface mounted above the third floor, the verticals. And while I appreciate the vertical, it seems very maybe if you had added two more and it would have really jazzed up that middle. But right now it seems very odd and random, or maybe if it were embedded in the actual expression of the columns, it just bothers me. It looks like it's tacked on, and if it could express a deeper, thicker wall, I think maybe if the windows were recessed 3 in a row, not just a window, but a group of them recessed 3 or brought forward, it would make it a much more effective use of that decorative element. Let me see what else here. On the corner, the masonry, the corner detail where you show the light colored brick turning the corner onto the lot line brick. I know you have a good picture of it somewhere. I can't remember where.
This one?
And what's done so often in our historic district is that we bring the brick facade, the front facade, around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So you create that, you continue the illusion, if you will, that the facade is not, again, just a facade, this thin, you exaggerate the thickness. And I think here you could go a little further. It just really, maybe it's not where you want to put lot line windows. I don't feel so strongly about adding more windows. This is so typical in New York, these masonry walls. And I love the common brick that you have. So I don't know, I would push that a little further because it makes it a lot more fun when you look down and you see the cornice somehow turn and you see sort of the two, they're not meeting at a point, but they're, wrapping around each other, and it's just a better detail. And finally, well, I will say I really like the top. I don't know, it's interesting. It's got a lot going on. I like the shadows. It's good. I liked it very much. And I think if we could sort of bring it to that level on the lower level, that would be good. I have a couple of quick questions about, also, I really like the artwork. I think it's just lovely, very pretty. It looks sort of, it's like, oh, is it an advert? Oh, no, it's not an advertisement. It's artwork. That's good. We need more of that. Lots more, less advertising. Also, I love I was going to ask now, I'm going to end on this. The front facade brick. Number one, what is the size? Is it one of these long, narrow, skinny things that everybody's using? Mm-mm. It looks a little long and skinny and narrow. very modern approach. Are there different kinds of brick, and what do the spandrels look like? Do you have a decorative brick texture or something? Because I'm not sure. Renderings are kind of odd sometimes, so I don't know really what I'm looking at. And that's it.
Great. So maybe I'll address those few comments now.
Sure.
On the base, we'll go back to the base. So we are trying to, we share your goal. We want to create something that has a real sense of grandeur and kind of dominance here at the base of the building. And this, we were actually just sort of weaving the stone and the brick together as a sort of visual transition from an all stone base to a kind of all brick facade above. So just sort of transitioning those materials, and a lot of times you'll see the kind of masonry mixed like that. And then one other thing I just want to mention here on the base. I think that was my base. Then I'll go to your comment about the decorative piers. So we were just trying to frame the middle. I think these piers are a stack bond. They also go fairly deep, and then there's kind of this decorative darker brick in between. So it's sort of a special brick pier. And, it's not your typical brick pier, to just give the center bay a little bit of hierarchy. But didn't want to just repeat it on all of them. It just sort of held the center nicely, we thought. It also was a break point between where the windows have louvers and where they don't. So these middle three windows don't need the louver below. So it was also kind of a way to make this center bay, feel a little bit more different and frame it from end to end. And then with the facade wrapping, I would say same thing. We share your goal. So we did turn that front brick material to the side elevation and extended it back quite a bit, about 3 feet before we switched to the red brick. So you really do experience the kind of thickness of that facade. And we wanted to give it that heft, and so that it didn't feel just sort of, like wallpaper applied, right? Which is, I think, what you were trying to avoid in the design as well. So we are implementing that similar strategy. And then I want to make sure
We're
I got all
missing
your
the
questions.
top part, though. Sorry to interrupt you, but while we're on this, one of the things I like so much in Soho, walking around, is you see the facade, just like you're describing it, but it also brings around the cornices.
Yep.
It doesn't just, that's one way, yes, it's just a slice, but it seems like here it could use a little something.
Sure. Yep. I think that's another opportunity for maybe a little bit more detail. We do, a lot of times they are kind of a slice like this, and even given our current, regulations, we're not allowed to project over our property line, but that doesn't mean that we can't perhaps introduce something a little bit stronger than what you see there. So understood.
Although they allow them, it may be a historic detail we want to encourage. Sure. And who's it hurting, really?
Yeah.
David, do you want to talk about the brick selection? Not a Peterson brick, not a sort of a long Roman brick, but
thank you. Yeah. No, this would be a standard 8-inch long brick. So, your typical brick size, not one of the elongated, more contemporary bricks. So we're showing kind of a standard 8-inch brick. And then in terms of the spandrel, so what you're seeing here, maybe you see it better here, would be that these darker bricks would just be canted in a little bit on an angle, and they kind of create this sort of basket weaving sensation in the brick. And so that's sort of weaving through for this full center bay. So that's the kind of feature that you see on the spandrel in the middle. The spandrels on the end just switch from a running bond pattern to a stack bond pattern. And then you also see that at the head of all the windows, that you get this soldier course running across everything. So, the underside of these brick openings, they're not just a painted steel angle. We've actually invested some real money and resources here to do a exposed brick lintel. really expressing the thickness of that brick wall. So it's actually a much nicer way to terminate the head of the window and really see that brick material. And I think that was all of your questions.
All right, thank you. Arturo.
I have a few comments and a number of questions. Could you generally describe how this project is being funded? I'm just curious how state and local agencies are working with you on this.
Could you get a better microphone position, please, Arturo?
Did you hear that? Or would you like
I did, and I think I see Jeremy is still with us, and he's best positioned to speak to that as representative of the client group and Children's Village. You want to speak to that, Jeremy, a little bit?
Happy to. The program component supporting the young adults would come through a subsidy that's available in New York called New York 1515. It allows for clinicians, social workers, employment and college support. And the building construction will be supported by the available funding through HPD and other city funds that should be available in the coming years.
Okay. And do you know if HPD is using the in lieu fund that we've paid into to support this project?
I'm not sure, sir. We've been in conversations with them. Having done the Inwood
at the land use building too, where it would be more germane.
Okay. Another question I have is, why is it 60-40% in terms of the split of housing?
That's the current requirement. It's a maximum requirement that we can bring to this project is 60% of these apartments will be for our young people and 40% of these low-income apartments will be available to New York City's families.
Okay. And then I guess the next question is for Alembic, which is, have you worked on a building this tall before?
I don't see Alembic here, but I can speak to Alembic. We worked together on the Inwood Library project, which is 14 floors, 22,000 square feet for the Inwood Public Library, a community center. The entire roof there is a garden. And we also built a home for Harlem Dowling. That was just 10 stories at 126 and Adam Clayton.
Okay. Another question, is this project offsetting the affordable housing requirements for any other projects?
It is not for us.
Okay. I have a question on the 20th floor. So on the 20th floor, there's a change in the structural apartments. Instead of 2 studios, there's 1 bedroom. And I was curious about that.
Yep. So the real reason there is because since the facade sets back that much due to that sloped massing strategy, these 3 units became too small per HPD requirements. So we switched from 3 units to 2 units, and these size apartments do comply with the HPD design standards.
Thanks, David.
Sure.
To piggyback on an earlier question in a slightly different way, why is the building designed with such a tall facade versus creating a setback and then maybe a taller building? How was that trade-off considered?
Well, I would kind of answer that maybe in 1 or 2 ways. I think looking at the overall facade composition, I think we wanted to create something that employed similar strategies and kind of had an appropriate scale to sort of the base, middle, top. So the size of the base, the size of the top feels proportionate, and appropriate for the overall height of the facade that's shown. So that's kind of one just diagrammatic, kind of design ambition. And then I would also say that in the historic district, you won't find sort of setback buildings, right? That's more of a feature of kind of more modern zoning envelopes, but that it is actually more common and more appropriate to simply stay at the street with your facade, even if it's a little taller, as opposed to introducing setbacks, right? Like I think a lot of the buildings that you see that are taller, didn't try to set back 2/3 of the way up to minimize their height. They just went straight up, right? And that's a kind of common feature that you would see.
Not 20-story.
Yeah, but they're not as tall, right? Even if you go back to that image, that adjacent building that's under construction has a setback, and it's one of the tallest buildings along that corridor. It's also more flush with the buildings that it's sitting along, that are alongside of it.
Yep. And again, I mean, that comes out of a zoning envelope, right? But it's our opinion that we would actually prefer to keep the facades simple and at the street face. Obviously, we're employing the massing strategy. We are at the top, which we think helps mediate the scale, but it felt better to do that to us than to set back. The only other thing I'd also add to that is we do have a fairly constrained footprint, right? So if we had a 15-foot setback, for example, we wouldn't be able to fit these apartments. They would be just way under the HPD prescriptions for unit sizes. They're already pretty modest, as you can see in these square footages. So there's also just a practical limit to how much we can just kind of fit in this footprint.
Okay. Do you have a view from the north available to show?
We do not have a view from the north, no.
Okay. So those are most of my questions. Thank you for answering those, David and Jeremy. I have a few comments on just kind of the other elements. I don't mind the gray brick. I think there's been some good commentary along maybe creating more variance in horizontal lineage, but I don't mind the gray brick. I think along those lines, with a lot of these tall buildings in just how tall they are, I think I just constantly want to see more horizontal separation. You talked a little bit about the base, the middle, and the top, especially if you look at some of those comparisons, 520 Broadway, 583 Broadway, and that horizontal delineation, that breaking up of segments is a lot clearer, right? Whether it's a cornice or an upper cornice, or just like a difference in the windows, and that's gone. I think with these extra tall buildings in this area, it'd be great to come back to these horizontal elements that kind of give you a break in just a continuous wall. And then on the lot line windows, personally, I think the lack of lot line windows isn't something that bothers me. And I think to your point, a lot of these older buildings didn't have them, and somehow they magically ended up with lot line windows. But I still think, to the point that others have made, whether it's bringing the facade brick and wrapping it around more, or having those architectural framings, but just creating something that's more than just a big red brick wall. I mean, because it's just a giant, tall red brick wall. And so just bringing, again, more horizontal delineation, maybe some changes or designs with the brick, like this art element is great, but also for the other side, I think would be a great way that, folks don't just have to look at that giant wall every day. That's all.
Sean.
Most of my questions have been answered, but what's the size of the one-bedroom apartment and what's the size of the studio?
Oh, sure. I can go down to.
It can be right. It doesn't have to be absolutely precise.
Yeah, no, we have that right here. So the studios tend to be in the mid 300s. You can see 368, 376, 365, 376, and the one bedroom is 522.
Great. No, listen, I used to live 2 blocks away. I walk by this building every single day. This would be a nice addition to the neighborhood. So thank you for a comprehensive presentation.
Thank you.
I've got just a couple more questions. Since we haven't seen what the north facade looks like, I have a couple of questions about that. Is the north facade, how much of the north facade is visible from a public thoroughfare?
We intend to try to take more views of that to document that. We don't have that with us today, but in terms of what would be on that rear facade, there'd be this collection of windows here for the studio apartments, kind of a double window, and then one window here at the end of the corridor. So, you know, it would be the simple red brick language like the lot line, but with these windows that you see here in plan.
And how far down, how many floors?
All of them,
I see.
right? From 2 all the way up.
All right, thank you. And also with these great blank expanses, of course, the question of advertising comes up. And can you speak to any intention you may have of including a master plan for advertising or anything having to do with any potential advertising here?
We've had no discussions. There's no master plan in place for advertising. I think we were all pretty focused on the artwork as a really great feature to the building. We would be looking for, you know, standard signage at the base of the building for the commercial tenancy that would occur here. But there's been no discussions to date about anything more than that.
So the possibility does exist then?
Speaking for the Children's Village, we have no advertising on any of our buildings. Our trustees would not entertain advertising on our buildings. We think of our buildings as homes, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Those were my only remaining questions. Anybody else?
Is that all the?
That is it from the committee, Chanel.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just unmuted
I
myself.
have just a couple things.
Oh, Sean, I'm sorry, Chanel, sorry. Sean Sweeney.
Yeah, I just want to, I think what Cass said was correct, that originally there were really very few lot line windows in Soho, like let's say when it was first, let's say around 1990. And then right around in the 90s and in the aughts, people were knocking. I remember because they were coming to this committee to get permission to do that. So they are more of a recent introduction, but however, a more historic, I think someone else brought it up, element you might want to do is to wrap the front facade around to the side, just to give it to reflect that technique, that usage that was in a lot of the buildings in the late 19th century. Yeah, just wrap it around for, I don't know, you might have to move those windows. Is that?
Yeah, it's currently wrapped around, right? So
I see. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So
I'm on a tiny screen right here.
No, that's okay. So we have about a 3-foot return on the side wall.
Return. Okay.
So it actually does read, you know, like a nice thick masonry facade. So we're in agreement.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Chanel, go ahead.
Would you put the picture of the base that
Sure.
we saw early on? I think Anita and I had carbon paper. My note was the base is not important enough to support the building, and the 3rd floor seems to be trying to do that. It seems that the base is not important enough to support the building. It almost looks like deference to what's being torn down, and that it's so much simpler than the upper floors, and certainly a really important cornice, and perhaps some treatment of the vertical masonry would help to just solidify it and tie it to the street more. Oh, and I said the vertical. What are the vertical elements? The inside ones in the center are they almost look like metal, and I can't.
Yes.
Believe it. No, upper the upper.
This part here.
I'm moving up above the.
Oh, these
there to the.
These two.
They look like channel metal, or they.
No. So it's the same brick on the 2 edges. So you get this, and then the middle part is just a vertical stack bond of that accent brick.
It's just
so it's just playing with the brick patterning for those 2 piers.
I understand what they are perfectly now. the turning the corner question, there are places I don't recall where that sort of keystone that, which could be an interesting thing, particularly with the lot line windows, so that under the windows, the keystones would, they almost look in some treatments as though they're brackets to hold the front facade on. It might help just a little more breakup, though I wouldn't want to design that myself. The I mean, I think, and I'm sorry, back to the bottom, that it's the plainness, I think, that makes it, along with the rather wide expanse of storefronts, that just, it doesn't have weight. I believe that, one moment, let me just review all my notes to be sure. Oh, the lot line windows, one thing that may, if we come to discuss it, and we'll do this in the business meeting, is that the argument for not having them is that they're not historic. The argument for having them is these buildings were converted to dwelling, and this is dwelling, therefore they would be justified. Okay, thank you.
Sean's hand is back up. Sean.
Yeah, are the bricks individually laid, or are they brick panels should apply?
No, this is all detailed as a conventional hand laid brick. The
I
only
thought I read that. I just want
yeah.
to confirm, it's hand laid brick, each one?
Yes, the only exception would be in this artwork that we would need to kind of panelize that, but otherwise, it's all conventional hand laid brick.
Okay, thanks. I'm going to ask for, since there's been a great deal of discussion after the public session, if there is anybody from the public who has a question regarding the landmark aspect of this proposal that has not been answered and you wish to ask that question, please raise your hand now. Okay. Thank you. So I think, unless anybody else from the committee has another question, thank you so much for your extensive and truly informative presentation.
Thank you for the clarity of the presentation.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you all for your questions.
We appreciate that. All right.
Thank you all.
An improvement from last week.
The next application is 233 Mott Street to construct a new 6-story plus penthouse residential building within a merged zoning lot of an individual landmark, 32 Prince Street. And the applicant will explain what that means.
Good evening, Community Board. My name is Mike Rosani with Michael Zenreich Architects, and we are here to present to you a new 6-story residential building at 233 Mott Street. And this is not located within a Landmarks Historic District, but it is part of the old St. Patrick's Church individual landmark zoning lot, which is why we are presenting this to Landmarks. And I'd like to, before I get into what we're proposing, I'd like to just have a little bit of a history of this lot. You can see right now that it is a vacant lot. It was approved for a single-family building in 2013, and construction was started in 2017. They built a foundation and a first-floor slab. And I can briefly show you what the committee and Landmarks approved at that time for that single-family residence. So the lot has sat vacant since that time, and we are now looking to construct a new building in its place. There's an aerial view from Prince Street looking south towards the lot of 233 Mott Street, where the building is going to be proposed. We met extensively with Landmarks with some of the supervisors and deputy commissioners to discuss this project at the very beginning, given, the adjacency of the individual landmark and the other residential buildings on the block. So one of the things we wanted to study was the size and scale of the adjacent buildings to see if what we were proposing was going to be, contextual for the neighborhood. And what we determined was that, even though there are 5-story buildings further down at 231, 229, there was a 6-story addition added to the church when they converted to condominiums. And directly across the street from our property is a number of 6-story buildings. So it was our general understanding and, again, meeting with landmarks, that a 6-story building was appropriate for this lot. Here you can see some existing photographs of the neighborhood with the open lot, and this is taken on Mott Street. We also went towards the back into the gardens to see if there's any visibility from there, as well as from behind the property. And what you can see here is what we're proposing for the new building, and we'll get into some of the details of that as we go through. But you can just see in these images, the impact of this building into that lot. There is very minimal visibility at the rear. There's just a small portion of the stair bulkhead that's visible from the back of the building. These are just some more blown up renderings of the front and the rear of the building. This will have 5 units in the building. There will be a small retail store on the ground floor, and then a portion of the first floor will be duplexed with the second, and the 6th floor will be duplexed with a modest penthouse on the roof. This is a little bit more of a blown up detail of that penthouse structure, which we decided to, change the pattern and the type of materials. Given that we have a brick building, we're looking at something a little bit more modern. So I can show you a sample of that as we go through. It's a metal panel. Here's our material palette for the building. So at the front of the building, we are going with one of those long Roman bricks. They're 15 5/8 by 1 inch 5/8, and we wanted to have something that was a little bit more articulate than the adjacent standard brick buildings that are found on Mott Street right now. However, for the side and rear facades, we are going with a more standard 8 inch by 4 inch brick. You can see some of the color palettes, going with a black storefront, black windows. And at the bottom right, you can see the material sample for those penthouse walls. Some typical storefront details. If anybody has questions, we can go through the plans. You can see, the program of what's being presented. The 3rd through 5th floors are typical. And then again, that 2nd floor is duplexed with the 1st floor, and the 6th floor is duplexed with the penthouse. You can see at the penthouse view, the setback of that structure with the elevator going up to the roof to provide handicap access for the terrace, as well as the egress stair. The upper roof of the building of the penthouse will have our mechanical equipment, which will be, behind screening. And here's a, detailed architectural elevation of the front and rear facades. We came up with a articulated, simple cornice at the front, trying to work with the brick detailing to give it some type of presence. This elevation on the north, you can see the adjacency of the adjacent building and where those elevations fall. You can see this is the 6th story that was added at the church. This is from the south, looking at that adjacent 5-story building, the brick facade that we're proposing. At the storefront, we wanted to kind of have a little bit of an articulation between the 1st floor and the 2nd floor. So we have this architectural detailed exposed steel channel with pin-mounted letters, backlit numerals for the building, and then a typical storefront entrance with the retail on the left and the residential entrance to the right. At the rear facade, we wanted to show the terrace doors that are going out to the garden, as well as the full row of windows for the second floor portion of that duplex. There are some blown up elevations of the penthouse, just showing what those would look like in the scale. Building section showing the overall height, which is all within zoning limitations. So there's nothing, everything that we're proposing is as of right. From a zoning point of view, we're staying within our areas and our height and setbacks. Details of the exterior wall assemblies. And here is, the last slide is the window details, and you can see these long Roman bricks running horizontally. But what we decided to do under the windows, we have those running vertically in a soldier course, and we felt that it gave it a little bit more character. So if we go back to the elevation of the building, you can see that we have this variation where we have these piers that are at the property line, and then they step back about 12 inches to where the windows are. And underneath the windows, we have a single band of that Roman brick. As we go up, we have 3 courses between the floors. And then once we get to the cornice, again, we have this decorative cornice element that you can see in this image. There is no parapet proposed on this building. We're trying to maximize the square footage of the penthouse, so the railing is set just beyond a curb at the roof to allow our terrace pavers to be installed. And I'd like to kind of stop there and then ask any questions.
There's several things.
Yep.
Going back to the beginning, it was in the first section, the landmark building that's sharing the lot. Is this building visible from that building?
In terms
From
of
the landmark building?
Well, this you can see in the aerial view, the individual landmark is the old St. Patrick's Church, and this is the vacant portion of that zoning lot.
The question is, how does this building impact the landmark building that's within the same lot?
Well, you can see in these images how it abuts that building. I don't know how it impacts it, but it is adjacent to it.
And it's just that the facade is it's just a street with a landmark building and then this building.
Correct.
Okay, it was all the to-do about sharing the plot that made it sound more involved. The windows, characterize them, please. What are they made of? It's I see it's 2/2.
These are what we were proposing were aluminum tilt and turn windows with an applied mullion to simulate a double hung window. And they're consistent for the front and the rear.
And the Roman brick, do you say the reason is to bring variety to the block? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, well, when we were looking at the block, there's pretty typical buildings, and we wanted to have something that would bring a little bit more attention to this building, a little bit more prestige to the people that would be investing in the property.
Okay, so there's no historic reason for it.
There's no historic,
if you will, an anti-historic reason.
It was trying to bring a little bit of modern interpretation of a brick tenement building and play with that brick material.
Okay. Susan, if you'll go on, and if I have other questions, I'll do them at the end.
Okay, Mark, is anybody from the public signed up to speak?
Not on this one. I just put it back in the chat again. So.
Okay, nobody seems to have signed up. No public member has signed up to ask a question. But if you have a question or a comment, please raise your hand now. All right, well, let's move then to any members of the community board who are not on the committee who might have a question or a comment here. Please raise a hand if you are interested in speaking. All right, no hands. So we'll go to the committee.
Just so I understand again, why are we reviewing this? Like, what
Because
is
it's an individual landmark that,
it's next to an individual? It's
In the historic district.
no, it's not. It's
Oh, it
part of the old St. Patrick's. It's an empty lot that is part of the old St. Patrick's, which is an individual landmark. That's what the gentleman said at
so
the
it's
beginning.
still part of St. Patrick's. It's on the same.
It's on the same zoning lot.
But St.
Correct.
Patrick's has nothing to do with it. It just
Has nothing to do with St. Patrick's.
No.
right, historically is in the same lot.
We'll answer
Okay.
that question now.
Great.
Okay, all right. Arturo or Anita, do you have any questions? Anita? No, Arturo?
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by the conclusion that 6 stories was appropriate for this building, given that along that side of Mott Street, they're all 5-story buildings, and the only 6-story surface is the rooftop addition adjacent. So why wouldn't it be more appropriate to do a 5-story building with a penthouse addition on the 6th floor?
We discussed that initially with Landmarks. And again, we had 3 or 4 meetings with the senior people at Landmarks prior to developing this. And, they felt that given, that there is such a variety along Mott Street, that this was something that they could support, given that there are adjacent buildings across the street at 6 stories. There's other buildings down the block that are 6 and 7 stories. And they did, approve this 6-story addition to the old church building, which was converted. Additionally, with the buildings behind us being at 6 stories, they felt that there was enough variety that there would be a road to approval for this building. And it really was, that predicated our program desires to have, to maximize the square footage that we were able to develop.
But it hasn't actually been approved by LPC at 6 stories. They just didn't indicate an objection, or I'm trying to understand that.
Well, with all these things, you meet with staff and you meet with supervisors at
Right.
the very beginning to see if what you're proposing is, if there's any, road to an approval. And, again, speaking with them, again, nothing is approved until you present to the commission.
Right.
But, we have the support of staff and the supervisor on this project. They do feel that it's something that is appropriate. We have a clean materials checklist from them pending the commissioner approval.
Okay, thank you.
It's typical that staff, as it were, weigh in, and we are in no way bound by their
Right.
decision or their reasoning.
Absolutely.
And they also.
I'd like to ask, while we're on this subject, the building, it's hard to see. Maybe if you could enlarge the bottom, something to show what the context really is. I'm concerned about how united these buildings are and look on either side.
We
I see the
tried
one
to
to the left.
document the entire block on this page, but
Well,
Mott
I'm concerned, I guess, about the blue buildings on the.
Yeah, Mott Street is a very narrow street, so it was hard to get images of the entire
Right,
block.
if you could just characterize what's on either side and down the way. They're all 5-story buildings.
Well, they're to the left of our lot, we have 3 5-story buildings, a 3-story building, 4 5-story buildings, and then 2 6 stories, a 7-story as we get closer to Spring
Okay.
Street.
And at your end on the other, going the other direction.
To the right is the old church, which has a 5-story existing building with this 6-story addition. And then directly across from us, it's all 6-story buildings.
Okay. So immediately adjacent, there are no 6-story buildings.
Not immediately
And it's
adjacent.
only at the end of the block, as far as that same side of the street goes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm
You know,
sorry, Susan, carry on with it.
I think if you look at the page that's LPC 05, in photographs 3 and 4, you can kind of get a sense of this new proposed building alongside. So I think that's the closest I think we're going to get on that, and it's pretty clear. Okay.
I'll speak more about that at the.
Yeah. Okay, Arturo.
And then just to confirm, the first floor will be commercial retail, is that correct?
A portion. So I'll go to the plan. So you can see at the first floor, there is a small retail store. You know, and then we have the building lobby. And then at the back is the lower portion of the duplex, which has the kitchen, living room, a powder room, and then a convenience stair up to that second floor portion of the unit.
Okay, so the seller will, the retail storefront will have room on the first floor, a small space, and then some retail storage space in the cellar level.
Correct. There's an interior stair for the retail tenant down to a cellar storage area. We have residential storage rooms in the cellar, bicycle storage. We have, again, this retention tank that was discussed at the last presentation for storm flow. And then the remainder of the cellar is mechanical.
So the only comment I would make, I think, on this kind of front facade is that it looks very modern. Just the retail storefront has, you know, this very modern kind of bar look, including the signage. So I think that part, when comparing it to some of the neighboring buildings and establishments, could be something that is a little bit more historical in nature.
It's hard because there are a lot of other buildings in the neighborhood that we looked at, and we can go to some of the photographs as well that might shed some light on that. A lot of those are cast iron buildings. They have cast iron storefronts. They have decorative, you know, wood banding, and elements that wouldn't be introduced into a building like we're proposing here. So that's why we went with a more modern interpretation of that.
Do you have any images of where the storefront meets the sidewalk?
Not renderings, just in the elevation drawings. So we do have a generous bulkhead above the storefront window for the retail tenant. We have some mechanical louvers above the entrance doors for some of the mechanical systems in the building. And then we have this decorative, steel channel sign band.
Okay, thank you.
And everywhere that's not a bulkhead in that picture is a door, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
And initially we had a much smaller division between the storefront and the residential entrance on the right-hand side of the elevation, and Landmarks felt that it would be best to kind of increase that dimension so there was a clear differential between the retail and the residential. So this band right now, originally we had this at a much smaller dimension, about a third of what's shown today. So we increased that to kind of, drive home that separation between the two.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, on the storefronts, just looking at it, and it just seems that perhaps if everything weren't taken to the absolute max, that maybe if the door frame had a little bit more meat around it. This is a very different vocabulary from anything in any historic district, because it's all so minimal. I mean, what do you have, a 2-inch door frame and then these huge doors? So it just feels maybe it would look better not to be so minimal with your framing.
Understood. They're only 8-foot doors. They're not huge doors.
Oh, that's a big door. Come on. 8 foot by what, 4? They're
3
very
feet.
wide too.
They're 2 3-foot panels.
But I'm thinking about the frame around the door is what it feels so modern and minimal. And it might, and these are very sweet storefronts along in these neighborhoods here.
I mean, that is an opportunity that you could take that would make this a significant difference in how the storefront reads in the context of the historic district.
Understood.
Okay, anybody else?
I just want to say something else in the public session that I'll deal with more. We've heard over and over things that I find antithetic to the concept of landmarks preservation and preserving the district. We want it, and we want to stick out or be important, and we want to maximize the space. And then the discussion about the storefront and even the choice of the windows as sort of deliberately modernizing the whole look. So we can go into this more in the business session. It's the philosophy I'm talking about here.
Yeah, and along with that is the idea of the long Roman bricks, which don't really have any historic resonance. But anyway, we can go into that in our business session. All right, well, if nobody else has a comment, we should move on.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
This concludes the public session, and we'll now begin the business session. I have tons of notes.
What'd you say?
Start with the easier.
If we can do them in this order, and then it's not necessarily logical, but it's how it's written down. The lot line windows.
We're starting with Canal. We're starting with the hard one, huh? Okay.
We're going in order.
All right.
I'm not sure this is the easy one. Lot line windows. It comes to, do we want to ask for more?
I think what we should talk about is the various ways that the massive blank wallscape can be mitigated. And since the maximum for a lot line window is 10%, that could be one element of a kind of a small menu of things that could temper both the east and west facades of this building. And those might include what I consider to be Anita's excellent suggestion to continue some horizontal movement with the cornice or the cornices. I thought your suggestion, Chenault, that sort of keystone concept was very interesting. I mean, I think, it's not obviously for us to design these facades, but I think it certainly is for us to not accept big blank walls. And even though, historically in Soho, these walls were blank and all of that, they weren't 20-story buildings. And I think that is what makes a big difference here. And as you pointed out, those buildings are now residences, and that's why they have windows on the lot line walls now, and this is a residence. So we should think about how to ask, I think we should think about how to ask for more variety on those facades.
If we're endorsing the art, which we seem to on the one side, and there seemed to be resistance to having it on both sides. Seems if it's good on one side, it's good on another side.
That does seem strange. What do other people think?
It might be strange to have the same thing on both too.
Right,
That's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, that's so good, unless it was something really different. I mean,
Yeah.
artwork is really a good direction to go, no
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
That marks our neighborhood and it prevents advertising and.
And
So
it's
depends
funny
on
about,
what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
and it's funny about art because if it's not the right thing, unlike advertising, it can lapse over into, may I say, artistic graffiti. It's decorative rather than the utilitarian purpose of advertising.
Well, it's decorative, but it could also say something, just like our iron floor joists that stick out of Houston Street. I mean, that's a very powerful statement.
Yeah.
I don't know if that belongs in the middle block, but you know,
And they did put a lot of thought into it, the way that they related that artwork to Chinatown and to the neighborhood and the historical.
And the metaphor of the lotus and the roots and.
I know it's very pretty. It looked very pretty to me.
Yeah,
At first, I thought it was a musical. What do they call it?
Staff.
Yeah, like from
A clef.
like over on Lafayette
Yeah,
and
the-
Astor Place. I used to love that sign.
With the clef.
The music, clef. That's what it
I
is.
think you just point out how the other side needs a little more.
Yeah.
How it doesn't need to be ours, to your point, but it just needs a little more than those two lines or those two boxes.
Yeah, Chanel, I don't
No question.
personally feel that we need to ask for a mirror image in terms of how we've got this many square feet of art on the east, therefore let's ask for it on the west. In fact, I don't think that's such a good idea, but I do think, what we've been talking about, which is creating some sort of visual interest, something that just interrupts that sort of
I think
blank
you call it
space.
variety.
And it seems like the windows
Variety,
is
some
something that,
variety on the west facade and additional variety along with the art on the east.
Like if you
facade.
see the Art Deco buildings over in the 20s or something, and you look over and all of a sudden you go, oh my God, they added that little element inside, but they don't
yeah,
go.
and we've had some that are rather, in this case, it would be reflective of historic renovation of windows inside the art, inside the advertisements. I don't think we've ever had a proposal for art for a new building.
No, I like it.
I
But
don't.
we should just say,
That was an integral part. No, we
you
have.
know, advertising becomes a very big moneymaker for these landlords. So it would be worthwhile saying that that's not what
I
should
have a
happen.
note on
Well,
that.
and the applicant said that they don't do that. So
But here's the thing, I think we need to memorialize that in
yeah,
our.
it's not that we're imposed. We're not imposing it. They're
I
volunteering.
think we need to memorialize in our resolution that we do not want to see the space become a billboard.
Especially something that big, unless it's fake ghost signs.
I think zoning only allows a 500 square foot commercial sign.
Yeah,
Well, we
Not
want
an
to,
advertising sign, it's a commercial sign.
well,
an
but that's what we
advertising.
don't want. That's what the community was clear on.
and can you imagine how big it would be? What's a 20-story high building? It would be,
No, I'm saying that the maximum is 500 square feet.
It's a limit anyway,
oh, there is, oh, I didn't hear you say that, sorry, I heard something different.
which would be relatively small on that
Well,
building.
that's good.
What we're saying is that we're interested in this, a treatment for the two walls, and among the things that might be are, without specifying so much.
Yeah, I think we can just give some suggestions, but
And we are endorsing
don't know what to do.
the concept of, as I understood, the art on the eastern wall.
Sorry, what are you asking?
The east wall has art proposed in the application.
Yes, and
And
I'm
we are
in favor.
agreeing to that.
I'm certainly in favor of that, and I think Anita certainly is.
Favor.
Everybody, Sean Sweeney, are you
Delight.
in favor of that,
Delight.
Art?
And we just won't mention it anywhere else.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, Chenault, let's not forget, I have a question. Do we need to approve do we need to write a resolution in approval of the demolition?
Oh, I did already. Excuse me. I beg forgiveness for having written
No, I
that
mean, I think
already.
it's a reasonable presumption.
Hard to get a building without it.
Bought into it right away, so.
I think that's a
In the name of the committee.
Good.
Now, I had to unmute myself. I think it's ironic that they're putting a reference to Chinatown because when the rezoning happened 5 years ago, city planning assiduously said it was not part of Chinatown. Ironic now it's part of Chinatown.
Politics. Convenient.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
When it's convenient.
What's next?
Having disposed of those walls.
We have the
Just a
wall.
moment, let me get my notes straight here.
Okay, we should talk about the base.
And next, if we could talk about the base and the lower floors.
Yeah.
Everything above the what do they call it? The column. So it's the
Well, I
two
think
bottom
they-
floors and that intermediate striped floor.
They didn't take it far enough. I think it's the first pass, if you ask me. I feel there's something wrong with the proportions. Maybe it's that the first two floors are too low. Everything feels kind of low and squat. It doesn't have that elegance that these are great examples.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's very little shadow. Everything is so flat. And I think the whole building is lacking in depth, period. 3 dimensions. And they almost got it, but then tacking on something bothers me. Those 2 elements, which were kind of interesting, but they looked so out of place. Like somebody thought, well, maybe this will help.
And somehow I did remember exactly the dimensions, but the second floor, the office floor, almost looks like a mezzanine that was added into a very nice tall ground floor.
Yeah.
That topped it.
There's no hierarchy, and it certainly doesn't, sing like the others do. You look up and you go, oh my God, this base is going to carry this 20-story building. We have something very weak. The columns, I think, are too wide or too unarticulated. The ones that represent the in the base. They just, maybe they need to what do they call them when you taper them? Something. Tapering is a great perspective trick. And then recess it or pop it out or do something. But everything doesn't have enough it's a shame because I think it could get there.
Yeah. I think
as I looked at it more, it's not helped by following through on the column idea and placement as much as if it were different, so that it was a base and the thing on top of the base.
Yeah, and I think the stripe. I mean, that's great. Maybe it makes it look. Look, everybody knows wide stripes does not make it look tall and elegant. We know that's pressing, right? If we want to go stretch it right
the
there.
stripes make me look fat.
Horizontal ones do, and especially because there weren't enough of them. Maybe there's something that misses the mark.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a grandeur of scale that exists in the examples that we saw.
Beautiful examples.
That isn't quite here, but is almost here. It could be here, and it should be here.
Well, and the top is completely the stripes, and then it just goes fizzle. So, and meanwhile, I thought the top looked really interesting.
Yeah.
and it had all kinds of shadows and angles, and it was just a little
Yeah.
festival up there. So we got to bring the base up, and maybe something needs to be elongated.
Which would balance them out better too, yeah.
The whole thing needs to be elongated. I don't know. I think maybe it's very, in these old buildings, we have really tall ground floor. I doubt we have a 15-story high first floor and then 11-story or 13-story. That's a lot, very generous.
It's luxurious. Yeah.
So at least make an illusion.
Yeah.
Create smoke and mirrors is okay if you can pull it off,
And the two bottom floors are not apologetic about chopped in half.
About what?
Drawers?
And the ideal, which is not practical,
The two bottoms.
the two bottom floors will be combined into one grand.
Two bottom drawers, I hear.
For the banking or whatever.
And there, those green drawers, I think that's what I see. Yes,
And this depth thing is throughout, we're saying. So
yes.
this is more shadow
I think so.
introduction.
Everything, and again, it's almost there. I kind of like just personally, I kind of like anything that's a basket. But you really have to imagine it. If you're going to do it, it could be, it's too flat.
Yeah.
And
more depth, more variety.
And the windows don't help that.
The window. I can't
So the windows don't.
The mullionless windows. We didn't talk about that before, but we can now.
And now.
Well, I would like to say we should really emphasize how much we like that the tripartite approach to a tall building is very appealing for our
I mean, the
district.
three-part approach. Is that what you mean by the approach?
Yes.
A base and a middle and a top.
Well, it's got the shaft. I mean, then that can go as long as it goes, and then it's so traditional to turn of the century office buildings, which is what this is mimicking.
The composition is what you
Right, what the architect referred to as ABA in terms of some of the,
How do you spell Mansard?
MANSARD.
Ah, that N.
Yeah, it's sort of a mansard. It's a
And it makes a very nice top and maximizes the occupancy of it, which is an advantage to the project.
This is not a very, very deep building. I don't know, somehow it's struck me as very shallow. So I don't know that we didn't see the back elevation.
Well, I was confused about the depth because when we learned that the front facade is not just the sliver that we thought, but is in fact 3 feet in, that kind of implies a deeper building. So it was a little confusing in that way.
Oh, well, yeah, it's only the base because they had to, the base is providing the ability to have windows on the back far enough away from the Lafayette Street building to be viable. There was a drawing that showed that
Yeah, the
clearly
layout's
they
pretty
moved
nice.
it back the minimum amount, but
The layouts were fine and everybody had windows and, I thought that was all fine. It wasn't like, you were gonna have more bedrooms if you added windows. Not really. I mean, I think that's the setup. That's the setup.
As you said, it's a shallow building, so there's windows on all the bedrooms.
oh, we skipped the windows on the front. Do we want to comment on those, or
Oh, they're fine.
are they small enough in relationship to everything
Goes on
The
the,
single pane is.
The front facade windows.
oh, let me see. I don't think that,
Yeah.
just push them in. Make them deep. Thick walls. We don't want, everything to be so surface. Give it depth.
They are pushing it.
Yeah.
They are pushing it.
Across,
Not very much. I mean, they are a
It's
little
all
bit.
trade off on space, so.
Well, in relationship to all these other layers, they're all very flat on top of each other. From what I could see.
It looked like a foot in maybe.
Yeah.
That's all for sure though.
Doesn't seem to be any strong opinions on the windows.
Yeah, well, we got bigger problems. We got bigger problems. So is that it? That's a wrap.
Just
right?
looking at.
It looks pretty good.
We have a,
I
are
don't,
there other points on the facade in
I
general?
don't either.
I like, it's kind of a modern,
Raised
it's
or-
sort of like a modern limestone.
Right.
Yeah, it read that way to me too.
and we have a note on the tripartite horizontal separation. Is that already in there? Having that kind of,
The spandrel beam
yeah,
face.
more
A
delineation.
stronger spandrel.
Well, that has a little, I don't know, what was he describing, mixed bricks or something? I don't think I really understood it. It's supposed to have a decorative treatment of the brick
Let's have another look.
at the spandrel between the windows.
We should have another look at that quickly.
It doesn't, it's very, these renderings, computer renderings are limited in some direct.
Yeah, clearly the bricks are
Kind of have a tendency.
enter, so.
Which doesn't.
But I like that idea. I think that's good. All the rich textures is kind of cool.
But the general theme is more variety on both the sides and the front.
Also texture like in, out, something catches the light.
Yep.
Some, a willing participant.
Yeah, depth and variety. Yeah.
And variety. I can spell that.
The depth of the variety.
I don't have anything else in my notes, Chanel. Do you have any other?
I'm looking, are you satisfied with the thin vertical things that I thought
I
were?
don't think it's integrated enough into the design. I think I just don't, it looks not integrated. It looks like a really tacked on element.
It does look like it's applied, so I'm not.
Like a Lego,
just had the
where
thing
it's fit in right there. And okay, I think there should be more of them. Then it could be really cool, like in between all the windows in the middle,
Yeah, I mean, that's.
but that's cha-ching.
Because I like the color. It contrasts really well against like the lighted gray.
I think it's a question of making them seem more organic with the rest of the building and less.
I hate this
slide.
There's a tendency we've seen lately of where decorative elements are sort of made fun of. It's like there's nothing, it doesn't have to be made a statement about ornamentation.
Right.
Make it work for you. Use the shadow, make it dramatic. Why not? Those are the tools. So to me, it's again one of those sort of like, here's the decoration, or
This is variety.
or the one over on Great Jones, that bothered me a lot. They had these weird things sticking out and cut off, and it was ugly, and it's supposed to be making a statement. Don't make a statement, just use it authentically, if you will.
And I think anything we're saying is not, I'm sure there are great economic restraints on this building that perhaps wouldn't be with a condominium. But I don't think we're asking for anything that's unreasonable. It's sort of
We're challenging them to make it
redoing what they've got.
better. Yeah.
I agree.
That's how, listen, that's how architects are trained. We just have to stand up to criticism all day long.
Is everybody satisfied with what's been said? My notes are exhausted too.
That's why I asked about the
Yes.
funding, because if they're not already using that CB2 in lieu funding, then they should be to improve the
But they
project.
are.
Good thinking.
We generally look for every source of capital possible, so it seems unlikely if it's.
And that's why I don't want to throw it away too quickly either, like, oh, we hate that. It's sort of like we want
More of it.
want it better utilized rather than, don't just get rid of it. Because I think there's, it's kind of interesting, but not that,
Right.
more or deeper or
Yeah.
better integrated, like you said.
That two projects that I've put in.
Are we okay
Okay.
now?
Yes.
Yes.
Are we at the gossip stage?
We can go to Mott,
We are.
go to Mott Street now.
Mott Street. First of all, the reason it came to us is because it shares the zoning lot and is adjacent to the landmark building. That may be more reason to perhaps be more conservative than we would be. And everything that I heard and said was that it's just not suitable. Every decision that had to do with because we want it, because we want to stand out, because we want to make the building special, it dictated the very things that make it seem not appropriate for a historic district.
Yeah.
And this particular street and this position on this street.
I'm new to this panel, so I will defer to the experts. I've walked up and down that street repeatedly the last few days, looking at the different buildings.
You need a better mic.
I've walked up and down that street the last few days. I'm not as experienced as you guys are on this thing. To me, it's a natural evolution of what is historic. I don't find it offensive or inappropriate. But again, I don't have the experience that all of you do on a panel like this.
You have your opinion.
So-
You have it anyway without knowing
So
enough.
I think it's a modernized update. I think it's fully appropriate from my point of view, having spent a lot of time on that block in the last few days. But I agree that not everybody will agree.
Yeah, I think the issue maybe is that nothing about it is specific to the district. That building could be a building anywhere.
It's
And I
inspired
think-
by many things in the district. I think it's good for those who are not experts.
It's not a historic district.
It looks
It's not a
exactly.
historic district.
If you were looking from an architectural point of view, I agree. But as an everyday person, if I showed it to my wife and said, "What do you think?" She'd be like, "Yeah, that's all right."
Right, but that's not what we're here to do.
Well, that's the question and that's why I'm still learning.
Yeah.
Is that when I look at this is if we're trying to make everything a museum, then that's right. Because we wanted at a certain point in time where we're freezing everything in place. That I understand.
We don't believe in that
Then-
either. Because we don't, yeah, just so you
From
know.
my point of view, this is an evolution and inspired by the neighborhood.
Right.
Not identical by any means. And it does stand out in a way that Chanel or others may not like. I don't think the standing out part is that extreme. To me, it feels like a logical evolution, but I also understand that I'm new to this panel and you have much more experience in this than I do.
I don't find it that anything.
I think that's, yeah.
That's really what it is. I don't think
Yeah,
it's terrible. It's okay. It's not, I'm not gonna dream about it, but it's,
But which of the buildings on the street do you dream about? I've walked up and down and looked at all these.
yeah,
Half of them are not dreamable. Maybe 3/4 of them, no one would actually dream. They all look the same.
All right, let's get back
So-
to.
Okay.
This one, to me, doesn't seem out of appropriate with the other undreamable buildings on that block.
Well, if we're going to,
Again,
if
can I
we're
say
going
something?
to
Can I
look
say
at it
something?
in
Can I
the
say
context
something?
of the street, that's one place to begin. Historic or no, our good sense in guiding old districts, whether they're technically thing, and it's come before us because of this landmark issue, and
I don't think
I mean
it's,
because of the individual landmark issue,
it's
which
neither
is
here
the
nor
building
there.
next door taller than which it is.
We have to
I don't
look at
think
it.
we can excuse ourselves from a critical look at it because the district is not landmarked.
We have to look at it in context to the building to the north of it, the St. Patrick's building.
Exactly.
You just have to ignore everything else on the block. It's irrelevant, the rest of the block.
Why?
Why?
Well, that's not irrelevant, but it's part of the, it's part of what's around.
But it does fit in with the rest of the block.
Where is that? Let Sean Sweeney answer Sean Ryan, please.
I'm agreeing with you, Sean Ryan.
I'm still trying to learn. So otherwise the question is why? Okay.
Because we can't really look at the rest of the block because it's not historic. So why are we talking about a non-historic district? We have to look at it in comparison to the building in which it shares a portion of a lot. Does it
And
look?
is that in the presentation?
Can I finish? So
I didn't see that.
What?
I didn't see that in the presentation. Those buildings you're referring to.
It shares the same, it had part of the same lot as St. Patrick's building.
They kind of cut it off, most of the renderings.
All right, sorry, Sean.
Go ahead, Sean.
I apologize.
So the only reason why we're hearing it is because it shares portion of a zoning lot with an individual landmark. So how does it look compared to the individual landmark? Does it overbear the individual landmark? How tall is the individual landmark? I think 3 stories. It used to be the priest's house, I believe. I'm just saying, let's not talk about the rest of Mott Street. Let's just talk about it in relation to itself.
Yeah, it's a point well taken.
Yeah. I think for me, the 2 most offensive things here are the height in terms of the stories. Again, just relative to the buildings on Mott Street that are adjacent to it, relative to the historic building that it was zoned under. It doesn't seem to fit that alignment. And like the adjacent building at 5 stories with a 6th floor addition, so it still have 6 floors, that just seems more well aligned with what's already existing there. And then the other thing that I just kind of also continue to find, like they didn't really borrow from the neighborhood at all in terms of the storefront. It just seems like an ultra modern take when there are plenty of great examples of restaurant or retail or all along that street that they could have, I think, borrowed a little bit more from. And instead, they really wanted to come in with a modern, somewhat luxury kind of take on that. And that's, I think, those are the 2 big ones for me.
Yeah, I agree.
But if we look at the landmark building in question, can you all get up the
yeah, I can share it.
Can you share it there? It's page 5. Yeah.
I think this is probably the best view.
And the things that stand out are the windows and just the proportion of glazing to masonry.
That's
and
right.
that it pops up.
Sorry, there's too much glazing or not enough glazing to masonry?
Well, look at the balance to the other with the one next door.
The windows are smaller and there's more masonry, and they're masonry bearing.
Got it.
Those old buildings are actually bearing walls.
It's also why they're shorter.
Big hike up those steps.
And if we're looking at the landmark building, and there are other buildings in the block are similar to that, not the one next door, but up the way, then that's the one that it must relate to, and that's the way it must relate. It lacks a cornice for the odd reason that wouldn't make everything was because had nothing to do with design, but to make it more attractive to people who live there. I didn't agree that having a cornice would preclude using the roof fully for a terrace. That's just not good reasoning.
I agree with you. I would just say I was looking on Google Maps in that neighborhood, and a lot of those buildings do just have a parapet. They don't have a very decorative cornice. So I would just say Except for the building, right? The
Right,
building.
I mean, even that would be okay, but then that was that had to do with the extending it
Right.
a floor above everything else.
Right.
Well, they're tenements, they're not row houses.
But I'll just give an example of the reasoning that goes behind this building,
Yes.
which was not because other buildings don't have it, or that it blends or is derivative of the neighborhood. It's that falsely it was going to interfere with the use of the terrace.
Right. Correct.
We certainly don't want to copy the building, but this is not sensitive to the building next door.
Well, do you want to take it element by element in terms of storefront, height, material?
Okay, let's start with the storefront and work up that. We normally do that.
Right. Well, I think that I think that Anita's point was incredibly well taken about the meteor door frame point. You know, those are very mingy door frames for such large windows, even though they're not that large. But I think the proportion of those door frames to the glazing is just mingy.
Now, if we compare this, we expand out to the retail place next door, which I think we have in photograph 3. Is that really what we want to go for? Which I think is incredibly ugly, but versus what they have. So if you look at the one right to the left of it, most appropriate, that's retail right next door. Is that what we want them to look like?
You can't really see what that is in that photograph. It's too hard to see the articulation.
Yeah, I think if you look though, if you just keep looking down the street, there are a lot of good examples of different types of divisions between storefront and residential entrances. Even on the across the street, right?
Just taken in isolation, and all of these have more weight.
Yeah.
So have it more weight is what we're saying to make it seem clear what the division is between retail and consumer. Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
And
anybody else have anything on the storefront?
And an 18-inch bulkhead, I can't remember what it was.
The mirroring doesn't help in the rendering. It looks really fierce.
Yeah, it was 18 inches for the bulkhead channel.
But the doors should have bulkheads too. I mean, to me, that just looks silly right now. If you're going to put it on the doors can't be these super thin steel.
They need a base.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's why I asked the question about how the building met the sidewalk, you know?
They just need more material. These are like so skinny. The door frame isn't even 2 inches next to the brick. So
so beef it up.
Yeah.
And
it'll look better.
And add
more weight means wider framing.
It'll look better. Whether or not you need it or it's historic or whatever, it's gonna look, it'll sell more stuff, I'm sure of it. Whatever that is.
Okay.
And then above, my objection is the proportion of the windows.
Definitely.
And the massive, what makes it pop out is that it's so masonry heavy.
I will say that there's also a very strange detail where these verticals run down and they right above the steel beam, it's got this little bump that it should have stopped sooner. You see what I mean? It's just very odd that it should rest on the masonry horizontal.
So why would someone do that? Just so I understand from your point of view, because I'd assume bigger windows are better in general. Is it, why would they go smaller and more masonry? Just a design choice or a?
People always do bigger windows now.
Right, but what we're saying is there's too much masonry and not enough window, right?
I wasn't talking about that.
Okay.
I was talking about how the masonry, the vertical element comes down and hits the black beam, if you will, when it really should stop up higher because it looks unstable. I don't know. There's something very odd about that detail. It's not something I've seen before.
Are you talking about how the columns meet the top of the?
Yes,
storefront?
yes.
Yes. It's like, as though they disappear behind it, but they don't go anywhere.
Right, and also the design really emphasizes the almost too much space between the windows, top and bottom. It's again one of these like random dimensions that could have been handled a little more, broken down a little bit more. It's just, I mean, it'll stay. Will it stay up? Yes, but could probably be better. Or some kind of again, that like a relief, a brick relief in between the windows. That would knock it right to all these tenements we have in our neighborhood, where all of a sudden you just have a little brick action under the windows. If you look around, you'll see them, and there's so great. That would help.
It was described as being earlier as being inspired by tenements. And
Oh,
seems
it is
inspiration
tenement
got lost.
vocabulary for sure, except it has no lintels and no sills. And no cornice.
But other than that.
Other than that.
And the choice seems to almost deliberately throw it off from either of the neighboring buildings.
Yeah.
It's just that enough to be irritating.
Well, this is the SoHo vocabulary that's really run rampant. Wherever you get big windows, going to the floor, in fact, which is all one of those where everybody has to have curtains, but I think that's where it originates from. And real estate. Light, windows, air. Makes sense.
And the windows themselves, the moldings and mullions seemed like the bottom to be, it almost looks like plate glass.
Yeah.
Renderings notwithstanding.
There's no window frame.
But it's like it's plate glass with lines drawn on it. Not this is what the window is. And because they're tilt and turn, it doesn't, none of that's needed for support. So it's a design, not a need, not a mechanical need. If we're going to take the point of view that we're only going to regard the building next door, which is the landmark, then it fails. And it equally fails by the streetscape, so it doesn't matter which we take. But its proportions.
Why does it have to be the same size as the building next door?
Proportions just need to be sympathetic.
I don't know what we're mentioning.
To the landmark building.
Joel, why does it have to be the same size as the building next door? Why does everything have to be the same size?
What?
Why does everything have to be the same size? Is one story really that big a deal? It's that offensive?
I didn't say it needed to be the same size. I said it needed to be sympathetic and harmonious with the building next door, which is not.
Related to somehow.
And look at nothing lines up except the bottom of the windows line up, sort of. Well, they line up with the building on the other side. But for example, the with regard to the building next door, if there were a cornice of some kind between the top two floors, that would resolve it with the building next door.
Right.
As it looks now, it's just taller and awkwardly so.
That goes back to what Arturo was saying about having that top story be a setback, the sixth floor addition rather than a full fifth floor, which I think would make a tremendous difference. And, you know, and even though the applicant represented that the staff person at Landmarks, you know, didn't object to that, that's not the same, obviously. And we can have our own opinion. And I feel very strongly that recommending that sixth floor be considered as an addition rather than a continuation, which would allow for a cornice, which would have a tremendous impact on creating a harmony, a rhythmic harmony with the building next to it. We'd get a lot of bang for our buck on that.
And if we had that combined with sensitivity about the proportion and alignment with the building next door.
Yeah.
Not easy to do, but.
Yeah, I mean.
Right, and then that
either-
throws it out of whack on the other side. So,
Right.
but I know we're not referring to the other side, but
But mass is more powerful even than alignment. in my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
Building mass.
The ratio of masonry to glass is that?
No, but just the height of it.
Oh, the height of it, okay.
The size.
Yeah, and it
So you
doesn't.
look down the street and you go, oh, it's a little different, but oh, yes, they're generally the same family.
And it lives more harmoniously, and it still isn't. You know, it solves a lot, I think.
You know, I think when we started, somebody said this building could be anywhere. I thought that was a very sort of summed it up, and it. There's nothing that ties it to the historic area building that it's supposed to, which I'm still not doing.
All right, so we're recommending a beefier storefront in terms of the, you know, what's around the doors, a bulkhead at the bottom of the doors, that it be a 5-story building with a 6th floor addition, a strong expression of cornice. And is there anything else that anybody?
The windows, lintels.
Oh, I think Anita's point about those strong verticals just sort of ending at the storefront very.
Yeah, yes, I bet.
Needs to be included because it does create a kind of instability feeling. You just feel a little queasy, like it just looks like where's that weight going and what's happening there? Yeah. Just weird. And let's talk about this Roman brick. The long Roman bricks.
You want to speak against the Roman brick?
The Roman brick is going to mark the buildings that are being built in this decade.
No, that's such a freshness
It's like
date,
an
expiry. It's got an
a
expiry date for sure.
It's like a color for the season. You're gonna look at a building, you go, that was built exactly that year. That's how it. So we like the classics here.
Real.
And it's just not attractive.
I'm shocked. So
Well, it has a longer life. It's a little less.
Prone to break.
It's like in urban planning. You know exactly when that urban plan was designed because of the colors they select for the house and the road and
the materials. Yeah.
It's sort of like the white brick of a new age.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think because those long Roman bricks, you know, might as well have an expiry date on the label. You know, I think we should not approve them. I don't know what others. I mean, I think Anita would agree with that. I don't know how.
I live in
We've all come back to what we keep saying is that it's not harmonious.
I live in a white brick building.
We've identified
And there's are there.
specific reasons.
I'm not offended by it. I just live it. There's one across the street.
You're gonna start, you just watch, you're gonna start looking at the city a whole different way, going, what are they doing?
My father lives in one. We all eat a different.
The white
Nothing wrong with living in a.
1962 was a great year.
That's
No,
that's not relevant to what we're
And
doing.
I want to be clear about
They're
the
not
staff.
landmarks either.
Oh, God, they shouldn't be.
No, they shouldn't, and they all have the same problem.
Correct.
The staff thing is, I feel sometimes overreach, and often the applicant overweighs what the staff said.
Oh,
The
totally.
staff
Can I say something to that?
is charged with ensuring that it's not just wildly stupid.
Yeah, I want to correct something about that because I do have some experience. And landmark staff is not there to tell you what you should do. They don't do that. They find out what you want to do. That's the hearing part. They don't edit you. They don't suggest very much. They try to make it happen, whatever you want. So what they are saying is they're just facilitating the applicant. That's the position they take. So
And it's very
that's very
different from,
different.
and it gets confused
Fighting
because of the new things that they could approve, which is an entirely different staff function and
Well,
probably
here,
different
but we're
people.
at a hearing. They didn't approve this and they're just helping whoever the applicant is to present it in a way that there's a chance.
I once characterized it as like an indictment. It doesn't carry a yes or no to it. It just says there's sufficient evidence to bring this application forward.
Well, it's not approvable because it defers, or what do they call it? It goes off track. Diverts. Thank you. I knew there was a D in there. Diverts.
Well, we have more than enough for a resolution here.
All right. Oh, my God, it's almost 9:30.
I will just say we have for our report, since we have a quorum now, just reporting on 244 Waverly Place and 73 Washington Place for their permits. Any other questions or concerns?
About those two items or something else?
No, it was just those items that we did last time when there was no quorum, and now there is, so it's on the recording and in the record of a properly constituted building, because this is not something that goes to the
a resolution
to the commission except as a report.
It's a very nice project.
To the board. We don't know much about next month except there's one layover so far. Hopefully we'll get a rest from new buildings.
All right, and I just want to say it's really nice to see Brian Pape's name up there. Just hello, Brian. It's great to not see or hear you. It's not really what I mean.
Hi.
It's great to know you're here with us.
Hi, Brian. We miss you.
We missed you.
Chenault?
Yep.
I'm regarding that 45 Howard Street, the stairwell in the exterior. Were any, Anita made a friendly change, and so did Arturo.
Yeah, we know about that.
And I mentioned a couple.
And I got that, yeah.
Were they accepted?
Basically, I think that all that is quite good, and except not to list that catalog of buildings, because it's the point, it's not the specific, it just clutters up the application.
They're well aware of it at the commission. Yeah.
Just to leave out all the addresses.
Okay.
Basically what you wrote exactly.
On that project, I'm just curious, we really didn't even discuss about whether it could just be an open fire escape.
Anita,
what's suggested in the
I'm
resolution.
losing you.
Oh, the resolution suggests just having an open fire escape, not enclosed.
Oh, right.
Yes.
That's a good solution. Nobody wants to use it, trust me. And it's in case of emergency.
Right.
Yeah.
And it
Are
has
you
a
objecting to
building.
that being are you objecting to saying that?
No, I'm agreeing. I think that's the
Okay.
solution.
Yeah, that's what.
And it has no
It's
foundation.
one of those things we sort of talked around and didn't solidify. And
It gets rid of all the foundation problems. It's attached to their own building. Okay. I think that's it.
and then the part about other agencies approving is very important, because there's all that dodginess about the fire department and the buildings department, and we nor the commission can do anything, but we can be careful that an illegal building is not approved.
Right, so maybe you don't put 1,000 people on the top floor of a building that's not designed to have public assemblies like that. They get very wide stairs like that. I don't even know if this one would work.
And we'll circulate and getting back on these two is really important, because they have to go in on Wednesday by noon to the office in some form or other. So we can send an amendment later, but it's frowned upon increasingly.
Understood.
I badly need to go if we're finished with.
What's that? I think.
I'm doing your
done.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
See you Thursday. See you Thursday.
Not me. I'll be in New Mexico.
Oh, good for you. I'm actually in town for